In this podcast, I want to talk about my frustrations with the manifestation community and things of this nature, especially with coaches, even the ones who seem to know what they're talking about to a certain extent, is that they have their own sort of lens. And because they have their own sort of lens on the subject, that it becomes a bit challenging for those who are not familiar with the lens to comprehend the subject, that being manifestation. So you probably have read something along the lines of The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. To be honest, recalling the book, it's a nice read. It's fun, it's exciting, sounds like it makes sense. But then you go deeper into the rabbit hole after reading that book, and you realize there's YouTube channels who live by teaching this stuff. And they are die-hard kind of fans of the law of attraction and or the law of assumption. Some people like to say that these are completely different things, while others say it's exactly the same thing, just different terminology. And there you go again, coming from the mouths of the professionals themselves. This is the case. It's either the same thing or they're completely different things, and one's rubbish and the other's not important. If I had to pick and choose, I'd probably say law of assumption, primarily because this comes from the author Neville Goddard, who was a Christian mystic. And as I'm coming to learn more about him, I won't say the full story just yet, but, he seems very reasonable. His approach seems reasonable. And this is the thing, it's consistent. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for patterns, trustworthiness, reliability, authenticness, you could say. And in my last podcast, I was talking about my frustrations of how people like to incorporate spiritism into the mix, which is incompatible and is often, it doesn't matter if there's truth in the words being spoken on the end of people who are involved with spiritism or the spirits themselves. It's the source that's not trustworthy. But not getting too sidetracked there, the topic that I wanted to really touch on in this podcast before it drifts away from my mind is really that it's about the noun versus the verb. Manifestation. It's both a noun and a verb, right? Manifestation is the event, the outcome, and we attract and or manifest outcomes and events that are both negative and positive. But when it comes to the verb, the action, this is what people actually mean by take action, the so-called 1%, God forbid, hustle culture. The whole point of taking action is literally the verb of the same word. And this is what I'm going to title my video, Training plus Education. And this is the biggest problem I see in the manifestation space, and this is the biggest problem I see with, you could say, online entrepreneurship. Big problem. Because you'll see so many fantastically crafted videos explaining how you can basically get rich by doing marketing. But there needs to be a big fat asterisk there, because although you can technically get rich by doing marketing or any other kind of similar thing, that does not guarantee you will achieve that thing. And sometimes I hear this on car insurance advertisements. They say previous outcomes do not guarantee the next outcomes. So, even insurance companies know something a little bit about this type of thing, right? And what about the world of Caesar? Medical industries, pharmaceutical industries, insurance industries. Goodness gracious. And government agencies. These things, and forgive the car sounds in the background, I'm on my walk, as per usual. I just studied Russian. But this is the thing, right? This is the biggest lie, actually. And I'm even seeing AI videos pretending to be real people. I mean, it's bad enough there's real people posing as experts on the subject, telling you that you don't need experience, etc., to become a travel agent, to become a marketer, and you can get $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 doing marketing. They say you don't need experience. There's just so many big fat asterisks that they leave out. Kind of like the military, how the military advertisers travel the world, make friends. They're trying to make joining the military look fun and exciting. But there is a lot more to being in the military. I haven't been in the military myself, but you might already know there are big caveats. You'll have to be treated like a bitch in the military. If you don't have tough skin, that's going to make being in the military even more challenging than necessary. You know what I mean? But back to my main point, training versus education, education versus training. A lot of this stuff is people selling shovels. That's how you get rich. You want to get rich, you sell shovels to people who want to dig for the gold. You don't get rich digging for the gold. You get rich selling shovels to the people who want to dig for gold, right? And what these people do, they sell the knowledge, they sell the education. And this is the big fat problem, the big fat elephant that people didn't even know there was an elephant in the room. That's the problem. There's no training to back up the education with these ideas. Manifestation, where's the fucking training? You know? So as a professional instructor myself in my own professions, imagine you're trying to teach someone how to drive a car or teach someone how to ride a motorcycle. When I've done these kinds of things myself. Do you sell the knowledge to the person and expect them to master and know how to drive the car, ride the motorcycle? Maybe if they're on a farm, they might try it out for themselves and see how they go, but what about the road rules? What about hazard perception? A lot of people, even when they get their license, they get way too comfortable and complacent and they fail to check the blind spots, which contributes to a lot of crashes because they're not aware of potential hazards. They're not thinking about who could be next to them, ahead of them, behind a corner, in areas they can't see. And this is the kind of stuff that I would personally teach. I would train people. I would mark them. Things like that. But you don't get that from what I see in the manifestation realm, in the online marketing realm. Not unless you can get tutorship. Now, tutorship is potentially another story, and that's what a real good coach may potentially be, a tutor. But for some reason, all these coaches, they don't want to be tutors. They don't want to be private tutors, which is how you really get the job done. They just want masterclasses full of hundreds of people claiming that they're helping hundreds and thousands of people, but there's no tutorship, there's no private investment. You know, imagine, I know in the old kids' stories, you know, from the 50s, 60s, 70s, Eden, have you ever heard of Enid Blyton? She's a fiction writer. I've read some of her books, can't recall some. You know, I've read some old child books, right? And in these old stories, there'd be like 4 or 5 different kids. A couple of boys, a couple of girls. And they'd go out on these adventures. But sometimes these characters are in boarding school. Or, occasionally, they have a private tutor teaching them math and just basically educating them throughout the school hours at home. Now, even this is the thing with homeschooling, is that whoever is responsible for educating the child is there with the child, educating them so that they are able to overcome the obstacles in the homeschool literature, right? There's a tutor. I mean, if you're rich, personally, this is what I would love to do. Hire a private tutor, just like those old books. Have my kids like that, you know? But this is what I'm saying. You don't get that with the manifestation realm. You don't get that with online coaching, you know? It's pretty bad. With a how would I say this? I don't want to say the word professional, but someone who is legally recognized and under government jurisdiction, for example, a university or a campus. These professional coaches usually like to shit on those types of things, but at the same time, these universities and places like these, colleges, TAFEs, they offer recognizable licenses. They do offer training. Even if the training is shit, they do offer the training. And sometimes there is no training. And sometimes there's actually quizzes and checkbooks and markers, and there's tests essentially. And you've got to be paying close attention so that you can answer the questions. So it's basically like a quiz at the end of an assessment. For example, if you want to get something basic in Australia, like asbestos awareness, you pay attention to all the lessons, take down notes, and answer the quiz at the end. So it basically means you are overall aware of asbestos, which is something I've done, and things like hazard perception and so on. Now, by heart, you might not remember every single detail unless you become a specialist. But you get the gist. But this is the problem again with online coaching, is I don't recall them really even offering something like that. And this is the biggest problem with self-help. Self-help doesn't challenge you. It doesn't, unless your heart is on fire. How would you know that you are intaking the knowledge correctly? That you are cross-referencing correctly? That you're being guided correctly? This is why someone like Neville Goddard actually is an interesting character in the manifestation realm, because he actually had his own private tutor, so-called friend, Abdullah. Don't know much about him. He was a Jewish rabbi from Ethiopia. And from what I understand, he had become familiar with something called the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism on the original first few books of the Bible. This is as far as I've come to understand. I don't know the full story of the Kabbalah just yet, other than it does attempt to interpret the Bible in a metaphysical sense. Other than that, I can offer no comment on that just yet. But you see how that's interesting, is how Neville Goddard had a tutor who understood metaphysical principles and put Neville under training. And in his own words, he would describe how the training took place. It might not have made sense at the time. It may have even seemed very abrasive. For example, Neville asked about going to Barbados. Abdullah said, "You are in Barbados," and you went first class, slammed the door, end of story. And you just keep on dwelling in that living place in your imagination and in your heart. You just kind of keep experiencing that. Kind of like a haircut. You look at yourself in the mirror, take photos of yourself. Maybe these days even take some AI generated images of yourself. And you're kind of dwelling in that dwelling place in your heart. And it kind of just eventually just caves in on yourself. And you get the haircut eventually at some point. You don't know when exactly. Maybe you do. But the when doesn't appear straight away. You're just meditating on the haircut. Just like how Neville was meditating on Barbados. Just being there in his heart. In his imagination. AKA consciousness. AKA awareness. So I'm going to end this podcast very soon, because I'm crossing the road. It's too busy. It's too loud. But basically, this is the thing. Training plus education. Use discernment by all means when navigating these subjects and when determining who to trust, what to buy. Because you might only be getting the education without the training, which I think for self-help is the most part. It's the typical case. No training. Because as you may know through my works, manifestation is both a noun and a verb. And there's one thing about all this that I'm talking about, is that there's something called an antithesis. So every single thing in the realm has an opposite, in a sense. And what this means is that for cold, there's always hot. For dark, there's always light. There's always an opposite, and it exists at the same time. And so that's the thing. That's why I bring up noun, verb, education, training. Are you seeing the picture? If you keep thinking about antithesis and then synthesizing that, you'll come to see that there's millions of antitheses you might not be aware of, and you'll see them. Anyway, love you, let you live, and so on. If you want to get in contact with me, beaconstroyer/Yenovah, or you can DM me on TikTok. Love you, gotta go, ciao.